What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Points Per Podcast. Thank you for joining us as always. Today, we're going to get into some buys and sells, some players that we feel like you should trade for or trade away before it's too late as we get into week 3 of the NFL season. And here with me to do that this evening are both of my co-hosts, both Will and Vishy on the pod tonight. Excited to have you guys. Will, how you feeling tonight?
Hey, man, I'm feeling great. Showing a little bit of love to Jaguars Nation. Not a Jaguars fan, but love Travis Hunter. Duval, you know?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love it. Vishy, how are you doing this evening?
Doing all right. I'm showing no love for the Jags. Come at me in the comments. But I'm excited to yap about some buys and sells.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. And we got a decent amount of players to get through. So I say we should get right into it. And Vishy, I'll start with you. Who's the first player you want to start with here?
Let's talk about Chris Olave first.
Take it.
And this might be a little spicy, but I think we might agree that Chris Olave is a buy. We all should be concerned about his injury history. He might be one concussion away from being cooked. And yes, his QB and general offense just aren't that great. But he has a 30% target share in both games, and likely touchdowns are coming. And per PFF, he has the highest expected fantasy points per game, the only person with an expected PPG that's above 20. And this is higher than Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, despite that overtime game, CeeDee Lamb, and literally everyone else. Now, obviously, he's performed well below that expected value. You can see that in the graphic we have up. But if we think about why this happens, it either happens if a player truly isn't good, in which case the team will just stop feeding him, or if some things just haven't gone his way, which should regress as the season goes on. Analysts, including us, were in consensus about how good he is. He's a very talented player. And so we expect him to regress, and we should expect him to perform better than he has, better than that wide receiver 33 rank that he is right now. And so if you can get him anywhere in that 20 to 30 wide receiver cost, I think he's a clear buy, and he should do better than that over the course of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Chris Olave is a great buy. I've actually been really pleasantly surprised with the Saints overall, and especially what Kellen Moore has done with this offense. The pace of play has been fantastic. They're running a ton of plays, and that means great things usually just in general for fantasy production. And on top of that, the passing game has been a funnel towards Olave specifically, but also Juwan Johnson, and it's been, tight in terms of targets. So I think that expected fantasy point number is going to continue to kind of hover around that range probably. And we just got to hope that things normalize and the expected number gets closer to the real number. Will, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that this Saints offense has been surprising, and Spencer Rattler's performance has been surprising as well.
Yeah.
I think they've been rolling, and if Chris Olave is able to pick up some of the stuff that he is leaving on the plate, I think that going forward he is going to be a great value.
Absolutely. So yeah, Vish, I completely agree. I like that buy, but Will, we'll go to you next. Who's the first player you want to bring up?
First player I would like to talk about is Mr. Rome Odunze. We're going to talk about the Bears. So what we're looking at right now is possibly the alpha receiver for the Bears, and I think that the underlying data and just the overall data just sort of concurs with that as well. He has a 29% target share in this pass-happy Ben Johnson offense, which means he's ninth in the league right now in targets. He's number 1 in route participation at 100%, and he's number 6 in snap share at 97%, and he's number 2 in red zone target share at 60%. Now, this is an extremely limited sample size. It's only been 2 games, but so far it is looking like he's the guy, and if anything, they're just ramping him up more and more as the weeks go along. DJ Moore has sort of been a heavy topic in terms of like trade rumors for this team. And when it comes to like coach speak, if you're one that believes in that, Ben Johnson has been alluding towards somebody at this team not quite performing up to standards, not quite holding themselves to the standards that they want this team to. And a lot of those indicators are pointing towards that being DJ Moore. So if he were to get shuffled out of this team, I would just expect maybe even Luther Burden to take more of a step up. But if anything, Rome Odunze is going to be taking even more of a step up in this offense. So I consider last week was the warning. This week we're going to find out a lot more, but I think that the trend is saying that he is the guy.
Yeah, I agree with this one as well. Obviously, this one's more of a buy high versus a buy low,
Yeah.
but I think that's warranted in this case, especially if you could take advantage of the market not fully reacting to what we've seen from Odunze so far. Like, obviously, it's been good, but maybe people aren't ready to put him as high in the rankings as we are. And as you can see from the graphic, we're talking about wide receiver 3 and expected fantasy points per game, 23.8 PPR points per game. Like, he's legit. This is real. And I do agree with your point about DJ Moore, but based on this role, it doesn't matter whether he's there or not. Like, he's going to produce at a really high level regardless.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, over the summer and earlier on in the season, there's going to be uncertainty about some of the ambiguous wide receiver rooms, and I think this receiving room was one in particular. And we know that Ben Johnson likes to spread it out. We didn't know maybe who would be the biggest benefactor there. I think the difference between 2 weeks ago and now is we have some clarity. At the very least, he likes Room, and Room might have that Amon-Ra role even in the offense. And I mean, at the very least, he's going to perform, and all we can do is maybe try to get ahead of that and others realizing and buy him quicker.
Now, I do have one more note because earlier this week, Eric and I talked about how usually the slot receiver is the one that benefits and gets that Amon-Ra St. Brown type role, but it just turns out Amon-Ra St. Brown was just really good and just played in the slot. But also looking at Rome Odunze's usage in this offense compared to last year, he had like a 24% slot usage. This year it's like 33%. So it is trending upward as well. So he may actually be fitting more into that role too.
Yeah, he's getting moved around a lot, and that's really encouraging to see. Vishy, you mentioned buying into the uncertainty with this offense, which I tried to do. Unfortunately, I bought into Loveland and Burton, so that's not working out too well for me right now.
Same here, man. Don't worry about it. We got time. Stay strong.
All right, we'll go to my first buy. That's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. This one I think is going to be contentious for a lot of people. There's a lot of rumors swirling around about kind of the cause for the issues here. But let's get into it. So I think he's a buy. In terms of his week 1 performance, I don't think that was his fault. I think Trevor's ball placement specifically to Brian Thomas was terrible in that game. The stat that I saw was that his catchable target rate when targeting Thomas was 43%, which would have been last in the league that week. But his catchable target rate was 88% to all other receivers, which would have been first. I think that that's more coincidence and just kind of variability that's going to even itself out as the season goes on. Week 2 was more of a mixed bag. I highly encourage you guys to go check out an article by Matt Waldman written on Football Guys, where he broke down the film of all 12 of his targets from last week, as well as a few more for added context. I'm not going to go through all of that. That would take way too long. But general kind of thought that I came away with is that I was far less concerned than I was originally after watching the game. He did have a bad game. He did miss on some catches and some yards and maybe even a touchdown by shying away from contact, which people are really harping on him for. But I felt like he did that less often and less egregiously than Twitter made it seem. And I also thought that there were some miscommunication errors that kind of just come with learning a new offense and new scheme between Trevor and BTJ that led to some of those missed air yards and things of that nature. I think it's important to note that BTJ is taking on a role that he's just getting used to. At LSU and through his first season in the NFL, he was almost exclusively a boundary receiver that ran basically only vertically breaking routes. And now he's taking on a lot more horizontally breaking routes in a new offense with a quarterback that only played half the season last year. It's just a patience game. I think we need to give it some time for things to mesh and gel. The opportunity is clearly there. And even with the poor play from Trevor and potentially from BTJ, if you choose to believe that, the offense has still been extremely effective. Liam Cohen is doing a great job. He's implementing all of the cheat codes like pre-snap motion and play action that we wanted to see from him. The team is 4th in yards, 7th in points, and 7th in EPA. So I'm just not worried about the team context overall. And I feel like if the offense continues to be effective and maybe even more effective as everybody gets more comfortable, like it's going to result in the fantasy points going towards their best players. We're talking about BTJ and Travis Hunter. It's not going to continue to be De'Ami Brown, Parker Washington, and Brenton Strange leading the way.
Yeah, I think this is a classic example of just wait for talent to win out because you just got to wait for the chips to fall at this point. And when they do, like you said, it's going to end up booming at some point because we're seeing the numbers he's getting already. 12 targets is ridiculous. If he just brings in 3/4 of those, we're talking about an 8-catch game already. So just hold off on it. Times will get better.
Vish, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree too. Obviously you're not going to get him for a wide receiver 54 cost in a trade, but it's going to be much cheaper than what they paid for him. And I think we can agree, and it looks like at least the analytics will argue that he's going to finish as right outside the top 12 or so. In which case, that's an easy buy. Again, I think we expect this performance to regress to where it should be given his talent.
100%. All right, Vishy, do you want to go buy or sell here? What's your next one?
Switch to a sell. Let's go with Kyron.
Dig it.
And so, yeah, Kyron Williams seems to be trending towards a sell this season. Yes, we spent a lot drafting him, a good amount of draft capital. And if we look at the downward trend in his numbers, like his snap and rush shares dropping something like 10 to 15% from week 1 to 2, along with how explosive Blake Corum has surprisingly looked given how well he looked last year, it's pretty worrisome. If we think about coach speak for a second, Sean McVay actually came out and said that the rush split in the most recent game, which was like I think a 70-30 split or so between Kyron and Blake, was actually what they wanted. It aligns with what they were going for. And so if that's the case, and Kyron isn't getting that bell cow volume, and then Blake Corum also continues to get some red zone and goal line touches, which he really didn't that much last year. And we haven't even brought up Jarquez Hunter yet, who hasn't had much of a role, but I mean, he very well could, given how explosive he is. With all that together, Kyron likely isn't going to produce near his ADP, or what you might even be able to sell him for right now. And so that's why I think he's a sell at this moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. This one's also maybe not a sell low, but it's certainly not like a sell high situation. But I think it's warranted just because I think the public sentiment on him hasn't shifted to where it probably will get to if this trend continues. You mentioned coach speak. This was something that the coaching staff talked about all offseason, and now we're seeing that put to fruition. You mentioned both of the rookie backs, or not. Blake Corum was a rookie last year, but Jarquez could start to work in as well. And he's just not producing at the level that you drafted him as is. And if we see this trend continue, it could get even worse. But what are your thoughts here, Will?
No, I 100% agree here. I think, it's unfortunate. Blake Corum, he can't count the 12 accurately, but he can run the football pretty well. So he may end up actually eating into this volume and being a guy for this offense.
I really hope that some of y'all out there watch that video. It's not that he can't count to 12, but he thinks that 12 seconds is 4 seconds, I think is what the video depicted. Either way, concerning. But Will, let's go to you next. Where do you want to go here?
I'm going to go ahead and push the red button as well. We're going to hit the sell button on DeAndre Swift. So we're going to talk about DeAndre Swift here. DeAndre Swift is currently 39th in the league right now in yards per carry. And mostly I feel like his fantasy success is tied to volume. But with that being said, those volume days are going to be gone a lot sooner than we thought they were going to be. And that's because of a guy named Kyle Monangai. Now, even Roshan Johnson, he was activated last week. He didn't play at all. But Kyle Monangai, his opportunities from week 1 to week 2, his snap percentage went from 13% to 41%. And his opportunities went from, what's up, Flynn? His opportunities went from 1 to 10, and that includes a red zone opportunity as well. So not only is he getting touches in this offense and a good amount of the snap share, he's also getting valuable touches in this offense as well. So one of the things you were kind of banking on for DeAndre Swift was for this offense to be successful and for him to get those red zone opportunities and score touchdowns, because really that's what you need. DeAndre Swift isn't very efficient. He hasn't been efficient since his days with the best offensive line with the Eagles. So when it comes to this team, you need him to score more. And if those opportunities are being vultured by Kyle Monangai, it's really going to hurt his value. So if there's any time to get rid of DeAndre Swift, it would probably be right now while his price is as high as it's going to be this season.
Yeah, I agree with this one as well. The role that he's had to this point has been impressive. But a stat that I saw, unfortunately, I'm not remembering who it was that tweeted it out. I saw it from multiple sources, though, that the run game in terms of what Ben Johnson has been able to generate in rush yards before contact is first in the NFL. But DeAndre Swift has managed to take that and turn it into the last ranked rush EPA in the NFL. So we've known that he's not great for a long time, and I think he's just putting that out there even more right now. But Vishy, do you agree with this take? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't have too many more. Even if you disagree with Eric and you do think he's extremely talented and one of the greatest running backs on the planet, I think we have evidence that he's not going to have that bell cow role the whole year. Yeah. And I think given that and likely a reduction in the number of touches he gets and the number of passes he catches and so on, I think it's fair calling him a sell. If we think about buying and selling and holding somewhere in the middle as kind of a spectrum, he's certainly towards the sell end. You certainly shouldn't go buy him right now.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, let's get on to my sell. I'm going to put James Conner up on the block here. This one, it's not like a must sell scenario. I do think that he is going to continue to produce, but I'm a little bit worried about the underlying metrics and also how much Trey Benson's usage has increased. But let's talk about him specifically first. There's been a little bit of an efficiency decline. Obviously, we're talking about a small sample size of 2 games. But Ron Stewart posted his data through week 2 compared to his season long numbers from last year. To just run through those, he's at 3.2 yards per carry this year compared to 4.6, negative 0.53 rushing yards over expected per attempt compared to positive 0.48, 34.8% success rate compared to 39.6, 4% explosive run rate compared to 14.4, and just in terms of points per game, 13.3 to 15.7. Again, small sample size, I acknowledge that. But we've actually seen James Conner improve his rushing efficiency year over year for the past 2 or 3 years now. And this is really the first sign of decline that we've seen from him in a while. It could be a blip in the radar, could just be bad luck in that small sample, or it could be signs that we have a 30-year-old running back that's starting to tail off a little bit. And so that's something that I'm a little bit worried about. I'm not necessarily pushing the panic button entirely there. But then also what I talked about with Trey Benson, stealing a lot of targets and basically all of the 2-minute drill work from James Conner, which I think is going to eat into his floor and that receiving production. In week 2, Benson hit a target share of 24% compared to Connor's 4%. And he's also been working in on the ground a little bit more than last season as well. And then the last thing here is just that the Cardinals have played like a cupcake schedule so far. They had the Saints and the Panthers through the first 2 weeks. So running's only going to get harder versus tougher defenses. And game scripts might actually favor Benson in those scenarios. So what are y'all's thoughts here?
No, I think that the reason why you would go and get a James Conner in the first place is because of the volume and because of the surprising efficiency he's had as of late. Like you said, last year was one of his best years. If not, actually, last year was his best year, I'm pretty sure. So when you look at that and you see that his workload is being bitten into by at least 40% by Trey Benson, that's not great. And when everything else is down as well, also not a great indicator.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if I remember right, I think in one episode that we did before the season starts, we did call out or at least note the Cardinals and their position players as a whole for having a very easy start to this season. I'm not sure if we're talking about the position players or maybe it was even their defense, but that includes James Conner. Their first 2 games have been easy. Their opposition has not been tough. And I think it's an important caveat when we think about the team as a 2-0 team and look at the production, for example, that Conner has had. I would also be worried that Trey Benson and maybe even others would continue to eat into his workload as the season goes on. So I agree that he's definitely a sell candidate.
Yeah, I like it. All right, let's get into your last one, Vishy. Who do you want to bring up here?
So this will be jumping back to a buy, and that'll be with pretty much kind of the cohort of rookie running backs. And so I'm going to try to make a well-reasoned argument for players that haven't done that much, including Omarin Hampton and Ashton Genty on the screen, who, if you own them, you're likely frustrated with them. So just bear with me. And I want to note this might not be applicable to teams who have started off 0-2 and can't afford to wait for performance to come. And I would argue they're a hold for the teams that do already own them. But we're at that yearly point where rookies, both running backs and receivers, don't perform as we kind of hyped them up to all summer, and especially all the redrafts that we were doing or redraft drafts that we were doing right before the season starts. And it doesn't mean that you just dump them to waivers. I think that's really a rookie, no pun intended, move in fantasy drafts. There's a ton of literature out there that suggests that rookies typically perform better as the season goes on, at least if you had to argue if it's going to go up or down. And that particularly applies to rookies in the early and middle rounds. These are usually great bets to outpace their ADP. So if your team is all right, maybe you're even 2-0, I would say this kind of entire cohort almost of rookie running backs are a buy. I think they're still picking up steam. This includes some that have already shown some flashes, like Bashal Tutin and Cam Scadaboo. And I would argue even Ashton Genty and Marion, who are talented, and yes, they might be stuck behind bad offensive lines for now, and that might remain that way season long, but they were drafted high to be used, and the teams know this. And so chances are that their production does improve. For reference, I'm personally in a league where I'm trading 2 running backs that have had some production, one of which is actually Jalen Warren, who's actually produced rather well in the first 2 games, to a team that's 0-2 for Ashton Genty. This seems scary, but it's a chance I'm willing to take season long, especially in the weeks that matter a lot, like these playoff weeks, because his cost right now, especially to a team that's desperate for running backs, is so cheap compared to what his ADP was, and I think what his production will be when we look back at the end of the season.
I like it a lot. And I think that's a good note as well to mention for teams that are 2-0 and can kind of weather that storm or be able to be patient with these players. Because, like you said, it's not necessarily going to bounce back immediately. But I absolutely still have hope for these super highly drafted guys like Hampton, like Genty. And Tootin has looked super explosive. You mentioned Scatabo. It's a good cohort of guys that I'm willing to bet on as well. Will, do you agree?
I absolutely agree. So, especially with guys like Ashton Genty, which I believe week 1 he had 36 rushing yards, but he had like 44 yards after contact. He's
Yeah.
gonna be fine as long as things go his way, and I think they will at some point.
Yeah. The film on him
As
has
well as all these
looked.
guys. The film looks incredible for Ashton Genty.
He's breaking tackles left and right. It's just the offensive line can't block for him. Hopefully, they can get that in order. All right, Will, what is your next player going to be?
My
Who's
next
yours?
one's going to be a buy/add on a guy I put $35 on the fab on this week. It's going to be Matthew Golden for the
Yes,
Packers.
sir.
So I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is on this one. So looking at the underlying stats, because I know last week Matthew Golden put up a 0. I already know that. I saw it just as well as you did. But in terms of the underlying metrics, he leads the NFL right now in average separation score. What 0.40, I believe, 0.400. But nevertheless, he is leading the NFL in that. He is the best at getting open in man situations. And even when you're looking at last week, he only got 2 targets, but both of those targets were on touchdown opportunities, and both of them were on bad throws. Where if they were thrown a little bit better, or the chemistry between him and Jordan Love had been a little bit better, those are going the other way. And we're looking at Matthew Golden a whole different way going in the week 3. So with that being said, Jaden Reed is out for the foreseeable future with the collarbone and foot surgery that he got done. Both successful, by the way, so speedy recovery for Jaden Reed. But also, as of today, Tucker Kraft injured his knee in practice. Now, they're saying it's not of the season-ending variety, but at the same time, they're not exactly sure how long he's going to be out yet. They're still looking into it. So there's a little bit more news on that. What I'm saying right now is there's more opportunity in this offense where people think that there's too many mouths to feed. I think right now there is an opportunity for this offense to kind of focus down into who they want. And why not go for the guys who are good at getting open? And when you're looking at Matthew Golden, he's a guy with elite speed, high draft capital. The timing just needs to be a little bit better, but the opportunity is there. And I think he's going to take it and run with it.
Yeah, I completely agree on this one. And like you said, like it's possible you don't have to buy him. You could potentially scoop him off of waivers after a 0 point week. And again, the context you added, I think, was perfect. Like genuinely, obviously he had the 0 point week, but this could have been a 20 point week with the type of targets he was getting and if those balls were accurate. So I'm very much in on Matthew Golden this year. Are you with us on this one?
Yeah, no surprise. But I am with y'all on this one too. I think if we look at it holistically, the Packers offense has looked pretty good. And Jordan Love has also looked pretty good. I'd pick him up in one league kind of as a last ditch effort for QB, and he's been doing great for me. And all we've seen since then is the competition decrease for Matthew Golden. Like, yes, Luke Musgrave will pick up some of the slack that Kraft had when he's out for a while. And yeah, they have a couple other receivers, at least until Christian Watson comes back, although Christian Watson might end up coming back before Jaden Reed does. But someone's going to have to pick up the slack in a decent offense. Matthew Golden was drafted high, first round pick for a reason. I think he's a great buy right now before his performance starts picking up the next couple weeks. He might be a tougher buy then.
100%. All right, let's get into the last one on the list for me, and that is going to be Mr. Mike Evans. I think that this one, as you can see on the screen, has a lot to do with like the volume and the underlying metrics, his expected fantasy points, where he's the wide receiver 12 and should be scoring 16 and a half fantasy points per game just based on the opportunity he's received. Obviously, he hasn't produced at that level, 10.4 points per game and 41, or wide receiver 41 in positional rank. I think he's also drawn really tough matchups. He had Derek Stingley in week 1 shadowing him, and then he had AJ Terrell in week 2. And still, it's not like he's producing terribly. 10.4 points per game through a small sample size is not that bad. But then the underlying metrics, like I mentioned, 29% target share, 38% red zone target share, and 45% first read target share. He's still the guy that this offense looks to first, even though Emeka Egbuka has been the one that's been producing over him to this point. I think there's been issues with Baker's inaccuracy, specifically when targeting him. He's got a 58% catchable target rate, which is ranked 69th in the league so far, and 173 unrealized air yards, which ranks 4th. So there's just some variance that I think is going to even out and come back to the mean. I think Mike Evans is going to look a lot better. TD Luck is another one in that category. Egbuka has been getting all of them. 3 touchdowns on 8 catches so far. And this is nothing against Egbuka. I love Egbuka, but I do think that is kind of an unsustainable touchdown rate. I expect that to come down. I think he's also 13th in actual fantasy points versus 32nd in expected. So it's kind of, these two guys have swapped in that regard. I think everything's going to level out, and Mike Evans is going to be great for you guys as the season goes forward.
I 100% agree. I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at who's getting targeted the most in this offense, I think it's still, when watching it, it still looks pretty clear that this is Mike Evans' offense, but Emeka Egbuka is sort of ascending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if stuff starts to swing Mike Evans' way as much as he is targeted in his offense and what he is used for, it's definitely going to swing his way. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think some important context here is like there is competition. Emeka has looked great. Maybe he hasn't gotten as many targets. Maybe he should be getting even. And Chris Godwin will come back, and I think Jalen McMillan is at least slated to come back this year at some point. And so there is competition, and there will be competition. But Mike Evans is probably going to be the one resistant to that, at least this year. This is still his team. He's been producing, and he will continue to produce this year. So at least for this season, I think he's certainly a buy. Again, if his performance right now is around the wide receiver 40 range, and you can get in from a discount, I think that's a clear buy.
100%. So it seems like we're all in agreement through all 9 of those buys and sells. I know that we had some that we didn't necessarily want to talk about in depth. Any honorable mentions that we want to get to?
Just real quick, if we could go over the Eagles wide receivers, that entire group.
Let's hear it.
All right, so I'm just going to read some numbers off for you guys just real quick. I'm going to rattle them off. I'm looking at Jalen Hurts on Player Profiler right now. Pass attempts, he is 28th in the NFL. Deep ball attempts, he is 24th. Red zone attempts, he is 35th. Team pass plays per game, 32nd. Pace of play, 30. Passing yards per game, passing yards, he's 31st. Air yards, he is 30th. Air yards per attempt, he is 31st. They do not want to throw the ball, and they don't have to. They've been winning games still, and they haven't been throwing the ball. They've been playing just like this. Jalen Hurts is still going out there scoring rushing touchdowns, so he's still effective. But when it comes to receivers, they're still good. They're getting open. All the metrics would tell you they're still good wide receivers. They're just not throwing the ball to them, and they don't really have to. So until that changes, they're a sell for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with this one as much as it pains me. I still believe in the talent of these receivers. I'm not worried about A.J. Brown declining or anything like that, or the injury. It doesn't seem like that was the case. It's just a matter of volume and the offensive direction. The new offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, has been uninspiring and has led an unwatchable offense to this point. But yeah, so I agree with all of that. Vishy, where are you at?
Yeah, I think the important caveat there is that they're 2-0. If they weren't, we could expect change to happen.
Right.
But there's 2-0. There's no reason to change there. We thought, hey, they might feed Saquon a little less and become more of a passing offense this year. And at least so far, we have no evidence of that. If you're going to sell them, maybe it's like an Eagles homer in your league, so you get a little extra back. I might suggest, but they're concerning, and they might even have a history of this. If we go back, they haven't been the most consistent receivers. Smitty has been kind of a volatile receiver with some pop-off games, and the other weeks, we all know the feeling of looking at him in playoffs, dropping 4 points after a season of hitting 20s and 30s a couple games. So it's not the most encouraging historical performance, and this year the start hasn't been encouraging either. And so if you're able to sell them, I think that is a smart call now before we see the pattern continue more.
Yeah. I have one person that I want to add, but Vishy, do you have anybody before I get to them?
I don't think so. I think this is pretty comprehensive.
All right, I dig it. The one guy that I wanted to mention was Rashee Rice. I would have thrown Tootin in there, but Vishy, you talked about the rookie running backs already, so I think that's a good suggestion. Similar boat to what you mentioned in terms of context for that. If you're a 2-0 team, your team is looking good, and especially if the Rashee Rice team is 0-2 or even 1-1, and they're trying to put up points now, save their season, I think you should absolutely be looking to buy Rashee Rice. The situation there in Kansas City has been bleak. The receiving numbers and the receiving core in general has not been very inspiring. And I have a feeling that he's going to be hyper targeted when he comes back. I just think that he's like the perfect role and mold for what the modern NFL is right now, and like beating zone defense, finding those soft spots in coverage. And that's exactly what Patrick Mahomes needs at this moment. And so I think he's going to be a great buy once he comes back from suspension.
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a huge piece of this offense. I think he's going to be what the Chiefs kind of need to really get rolling. Like, we've seen the pretty stale offense from him, but I think things may get jump started a little bit more when he comes back.
Yeah, I think the context of the state of their offenses was nice to hear. I admit I haven't thought about it too much, but I feel like I should go make some offers. Now I want me some Rice after seeing how they've been the first couple weeks. He could explode week 7 through 16, 17 that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to get 20 targets a game.
I hope so. But I think that will do it for us. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you guys were able to take something good away from this. Let us know down in the comments below if you're looking to trade for any of these guys, or if you're successful in doing so. Any other buys and sells that you guys have. If you guys did enjoy, do leave a like, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. But yeah, I think that'll do it. We appreciate you guys as always for watching till the end, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
See you.
Peace.